Hello. Welcome to another episode of Season 16 of the Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, the theme is B movies for C students. We're taking a break from the current trends toward elevated horror and examining the history of horror B movies and how they've developed over time. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode. So, is this movie called Avenged or Savaged?
Well, I don't know, but I kind of thought I should have looked up Savage to see, but I don't know. I found it by Avenged.
In my head now, it's just Savaged, which is not right, but it just, because depending on what you're searching and where it goes back and forth, I think that originally when it was first made, it was called Savaged, but when they released it for like home, like DVD and stuff, they changed it to Avenged. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, I'll take it. I mean, also it's kind of, savage, but also a Native American theme. A little rough. We're not all savages.
Yeah, I think that most likely the original name was meant to be a very clever double meaning for the film, and then they realized that one of those meanings was wildly inappropriate.
Yeah, it's exactly what happened.
But but this is exactly the type of thing we have come to expect from B horror movies, which is what we are reviewing this season.
Yeah, exactly.
We've been doing two movies from each decade, from the 1920s or 30s, I can't remember where we started, through the 2020s. And right now we're about to talk about our second movie from the 2010s. And this is another one that I feel like we've kind of gotten into this era where these independent movies get made and then shown at film festivals. And then based on that, they get like picked up for further distribution.
Right.
Which is kind of an interesting model compared to where we've been in the past. And I think that it's interesting because all you have to care about now is just like getting the movie made. And then all of the like advertising and distribution and stuff can be somebody else's problem. And I feel like that's become such a big part of the budget of like modern Hollywood movies that it's interesting that there's kind of this alternative route to get there.
Yeah. And, I definitely like it. I mean, it definitely gives you're going to have good and bad media come from it for sure. It's not necessarily a good thing that everyone can make movies. We've seen that right. With a few that I refuse to talk about now, but I at least like the idea that you can do it, except for maybe that puts all the power in distribution's hands, but who cares?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like there's a certain amount of punk rock about it. It's like, if you can just get your chance to do your thing on stage, then people might notice. And then that might be your big break, which is a very like early 2000s kind of music thing. Yeah. But yeah, it seems like it's kind of through the 2010s still going strong for movies. And I think one thing that we definitely see, though, in this case, is that the horror movies are going for some sort of like extreme or shocking niche. Like they're trying to find their way or their hook, that makes them stand out from all the other films at the film festival. And so this one, Avenged, but previously named Savaged, in Wikipedia, it refers to it as a redsploitation film. And I had to look that up to even know what it was. Yeah. But at least also according to Wikipedia, which is always right about everything, it says the redsploitation genre concerns Native American characters almost always played by white actors, usually exacting their revenge on their white tormentors. And so what's kind of interesting about that is that it's almost like the opposite of blaxploitation. Because when we talked about Blackula several weeks ago, we talked about how like blaxploitation was actually a film movement, by and for black filmmakers, and how it kind of made fun of white stereotypes or stereotypes that white people had for black people and their interactions. And it was like, if you were in on the joke, there was a lot of really clever kind of funny stuff in there. Redsploitation kind of seems more like, oh, this is just extreme kind of gory that's playing on, people's biases and going for the shock that comes along with that. So it's a really different type of exploitation film in this case, it seems.
I can see that. I mean, I think that, well, first off, I'm glad that you selected to do that, to read about it, because I went to do it while in Wikipedia and like hovered over it, and it was just like exploitation. Like I was going to have to search for red split, and I wasn't about it. I wasn't about that life. But I will say it is kind of gnarly. I've definitely watched, I'm a big Western fan. I've definitely watched a few Westerns where it's like clearly like a white dude.
Definitely.
That's Native American. And you're just like, oh, that's kind of, I don't know, strange. Like, especially in the 50s or 60s, like you were so much closer to so many like full blood Native Americans back then. There were so many opportunities.
Right.
But still.
Yeah. And so if you want to look it up on Wikipedia under Redsploitation, it has a list of a bunch of movies that would fall into that. One that it doesn't have, though, was Bone Tomahawk, which I kind of thought would show up there. But I guess they weren't really as explicitly Native American in that one. But anyway, yeah. So,
well, wait, sorry, I was muted. Weren't they saying that it's white people portraying Native Americans?
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know if they necessarily, I feel like that's probably fewer and far between nowadays, just from the fact of society's better.
And that's why I think this one stood out. People aren't really doing this now, and so it was like a unique type of horror movie that I've seen in the recent past.
Which I will say too is just like kind of strange to me in a way, but I don't want to get into that because I'm afraid.
Yeah. But this movie definitely played into that a lot, and that was like a big part of the scares and the gore and everything. So I want to come back to that more, but I felt like it was important to just kind of set the scene before we got into it. Cool. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this one with you. So I'm going to do a quick introduction, and then we will get I did not realize that being possessed by an Indian chief spirit would also make a deaf person able to hear in a few scenes that they didn't choreograph correctly, but I'm here for it. Details. In 2013, Avenged had its world premiere at the Busan International Film Festival. It would later be released in 2015 in the US with the title Avenged. This film was written and directed by Michael Oeda and was distributed by Raven Banner Entertainment. It tells the story of a deaf and mute girl who is on a solo road trip across the American Southwest who gets kidnapped and murdered by some racist losers in New Mexico. They end up killing her, but an Apache shaman and a vengeful spirit work together to bring her back to life for one last revenge tour. I couldn't find any financial information on this one, or much information on most of the other stuff about it, but you can stream it for free with ads on Tubi. There is shockingly little information about this movie online.
Maybe were you searching for Avenged and maybe it was under Savage? Because now that's what I'm worried about.
Well, I was trying to find both. That's like either one, and it just a lot of links to Avenged Sevenfold songs.
Yeah, I can see that. It's Avenged. That's what we're rapidly.
Avenged. But yeah, how did you hear about this movie?
I was sick for like 5 weeks in a row. Not great. Yeah. And just while laying down, I was just reading, like trying to find like a good one, like trying to find one that kind of met B movie category in 2010. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit easier for people to record these films. So I was just like on IMDb and looking at lists online. And then I saw it and I was reading it. I was like, well, this could be interesting. Like, you have a deaf mute person, but I was just like, oh, well, I want to see, Hush was good. that involved.
I had exactly the same thought. Yeah, I wondered how much like your enjoyment of Hush informed the choice of this movie.
Probably a lot, but then I was like, oh well, it's like a Native American spirit, and it's like, oh, we could have some fun with this. It's not like we get to watch too many Native American horror movies, or out there. So it's like I want to see, and being that it was like possessing her, I was like, at least like it'll be on the good side this time, considering like what it was about. I was wanting to find a movie. I think I even like text you, like we're talking like 2010 through to current, right? Or 20. I can't remember how it came out, but it was basically like, I think I was 1 year off from like I Spit on Your Grave, and which I kind of wanted to do, but then I saw this and I was like, well, this is like 100% meets our criteria for what we're wanting to watch. And so I was like, I'll just do this. This is for sure a B movie. Which I think I Spit on Your Grave is too, but still. So it just kind of lined up and I just went with it. And then I watched it and I was like, fuck. Should have picked I Spit on Your Grave.
Well, this one I think was a good pick for a lot of the things that we talk about with B horror movies, in the the picture quality was not great, and it had kind of this washed out sepia tone look, and
that was very stupid. So stupid, Daniel. Sorry. I hated that so much.
It was hard to watch.
I'm sorry.
But like thinking back on it, I feel like there were a lot of movies made around the same, like 10 years before this that looked just like that. And I don't know how much of it was just kind of like the beginnings of widely available digital filming, and how much of it was like it was at that time when we were kind of going from the standard picture to like widescreen format, and there's just a lot of stuff that didn't really translate well in that whole era, because it reminded me a lot of other stuff from that time, like even down to that like generic typewriter font credits in the open, like I think that was pretty much in iMovie at that time or something, because it was everywhere for
the whole like color tone of that film. Like if they had just removed that, my life would have been 10 times better. It was like, here's the equivalent. I'm sure we have people who play video games, but listening, but like it's if you turn like the brightness up on a game,
right,
full blast, because you're playing at night in the game and you want to see something because you got to make it back or whatever, and then you forget about it, and then it comes to the daylight and it's just like everything's just off. That's the whole damn movie was that. I was so mad.
Yeah, and it definitely might have helped some of the practical effects a little bit, because it definitely was not a high definition movie. Like it really felt almost, at times it almost felt a little animated, just because of how kind of washed the color was.
Yeah, I can see that.
But yeah, and so just in sticking with that, I mean, there were a lot of things about the overall production of this that just felt very low budget, like very generic music, there were just the random slow motion scenes or the dramatic pauses in the film that just felt disjointed. Like there was a lot of things about the making of the movie that I don't feel like did super well, but and the acting, but the practical effects I thought were one area that were better than I would have expected given everything else.
Yeah, I think for me it was. So I think the darkness and that weird color on the film during day was like definitely helped practical effects. Like when she's putting her hand back on with the arrow, like towards the end, like that looked crazy. But to me, it was just like I feel like you guys put in a lot of work to add this stuff, but it doesn't like to add, like there's extra work that you did to make your film look this way, and it doesn't necessarily make too much sense why you would pay extra money to do that when it would look fine normally. Like just add some shading to the film or something. But it definitely it as far as so we're watching this under the B movie eye, and I feel like this actually did hit the mark a lot for B movies, like the
absolutely
smaller cast, not necessarily in great acting. The convoluted plot is obviously the case with this one, because if you blink, you miss the part where the guy is like, "Oops, I accidentally resurrected him too," or like he's now part.
Like the explanation was short, but also didn't make sense.
And it seemed like the filmmakers had. It seems like the filmmakers knew the points, or knew what to do as far as like you would have a scene where like if it's sad, you start having sad music kind of play. Like they knew what to do. They just did it at the wrong place every single time. Like the guy, her boyfriend was being kidnapped, or like was talking about her with his kidnappers, and like all of a sudden like this like Full House type, like sadness song kind of comes on, and it's like, why now? Like this the scene isn't over yet. Mm-hmm. It's still going, and you just had a weird little music break for two. It just didn't make sense to me at times. Sometimes not making sense is cool, but you got to have at least a couple other things going for you. And, this one was a little rough.
Yeah. I think that this one crashed and burned anytime it was trying to be dramatic. And then it really did well when it was just all out like slasher.
Right.
And I feel like one of the best examples of that is just that opening montage of her on the road trip.
Oh God, dude!
It was just like,
oh my God, dude! What was this on MySpace? Is they put this out on MySpace or some shit? Oh God, dude!
Yeah, it looked like a really, really bad early 2000s music video.
And something that our listeners can't relate, or I don't know, might be able to relate to, but this is very specific. Like the whole time I'm watching it, I'm just like, I fucking feel bad for that guy, for Daniel. I can't believe I'm making him do this. Like it's legit. Like you're almost a little bit even more upset with yourself because you're like, I don't mind watching this shit. Like I'll watch whatever, the shit I watch is nuts.
I made this decision. I'll live with it.
Yeah, but it's like I made this decision for both of us, and now he has to lie in the bed too. But, you signed up for that 30 years ago, man. That's your fault. But
yeah.
Still, I was just like, it's just funny to me because that comes up every time. I'm just like, fuck, I can't believe I just made Daniel watch this shit.
Yeah. I definitely find myself thinking about like the parts you're going to comment on, good or bad, a lot when we watch these movies, like way more than when I'm watching something, just of my own volition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the opening, real rough, the whole scene where deciding what to do with their victim came down to a really dramatic game of cards. I was just like, what are we doing here?
God. Yeah.
But with that, I did like that it seemed like the brother or the cousin or whoever, the guy with the knife, was like really concerned about the hostage. And you're like, okay, maybe he's kind of like the bad guy with a good heart. Like maybe he's the one that's going to end up saving the day or something. And then you find out very quickly that like, oh no, he's just like he's not morally opposed to what they're doing. He's just worried that it'll make the cops show up and that'll be a hassle. So he's like, no, we just need to hurry up and kill her before the cops show up. Not we need to let her go.
Yeah.
And so, then the whole like torture stuff was pretty gnarly. And then, after she's dead and the boyfriend coming to town and everything around that, like his character was just kind of like the helpless sidekick the whole time.
Yeah.
And they gave him no background or real reason for you to like care about him. I think the main things that mattered in this movie were the way that the Apache guy found the girl's body and then did the ritual and brought her back to life. And then she like comes back and floats off the ground and is like possessed, saying now they will walk in hell. And it's like really, like intense. And that was the first time in this movie that it really like caught my attention is, oh, there's something here that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And so from that point forward, I thought it was a lot better, but getting there was just rough.
Yeah. Yeah. It took a little too long. And, it's also difficult. So I like Quentin Tarantino movies. Have good dialogue, cool scenes, stuff like that. Uses a lot of terms I wouldn't use in dialogue.
Yeah.
This one was the same, and I really believe that. I'm just saying, like, the bad guys were already killing a Native American, and then you introduce an African American, interracial couple, which is I'm fine with. I'm perfectly fine with, but it was just like the focus. Like, these guys were racist and like killing Native Americans, and then it was then African American, and the only thing I could think of was like I think they just wanted to say terms that I wouldn't say.
Yeah, it felt like his character was in the movie specifically for them to be racist towards.
Yeah, and it was just it was weird to me because it's just like why add more? Like the proof is in the pudding at the beginning,
right? Yeah,
with it, and it just seemed odd, odd to me. I was just I don't know. It's just I was just uncomfortable with it. Like I didn't necessarily understand the purpose of it, so I was kind of like thrown, I think, at that point too, but she did get her revenge, and it wasn't, the problem was it was kind of quick. I was kind of thinking it was gonna be a lot like I Sped Her Grave, where like she's like torturing them of sorts, like actually like hanging them over like a bathtub with battery acid in it,
yeah, like more torture, less slasher.
Yeah, like something you would probably want to do to someone who like tortured you, like she went through, but it was just like one and done, which is fine. I think that they deserved it, but still.
Yeah, and I feel like at that point it really got into more of kind of the classic slasher formula, where she's like hunting them down, and then there's this gnarly death that comes after like the build up to the confrontation, and so. It definitely had kind of that throwback kind of B-movie feel to it when we were in that world. But I don't know. There were also just a lot of little things that bothered me. Like after she came back from the dead on the phone, when she was using the payphone, she was clearly reacting to the boyfriend's voice. And then in the barn the next day, she like found that radio and was clearly reacting to the sound coming out of it. And so it's just like, being reanimated makes you not deaf, but you're still mute somehow. But also, we're going to pretend like you can't hear sometimes. Like, what is happening? And can we just follow our own rules here?
Right. Yeah, it was. Which again, we're talking B movie, but still, it was like you're just adding things for convenience at this point. It's basically like just to add it to the movie plot. We have a loophole here. We'll just add something to the movie. But I'm glad someone else noticed that she was definitely like reacting to what was being said, because it was definitely like, wait a minute. Because I mean, mute is different than deaf.
Very
like,
different.
So it's like, well, if that's the case, she just can't talk. But you can hear. I don't know. I was just confused.
Yeah.
And also, why, I guess, is the other thing too. Like you could get away with making this movie without making her deaf or mute, and just not finding a phone or radio. Yeah, again, I should be hired by B movies. I could probably save some money.
Yeah, to point out the plot holes, like the easy to eliminate plot holes.
Yeah,
yeah, and so again, we've focused on a lot of the stuff that made this not good.
Yeah.
But if you were to just kind of forget about the first third of the movie and then get into more of the, after she comes back from the dead and is getting revenge on the guys that had killed her. If we only watched that part, I think we would both feel a lot more positively about it.
Absolutely.
Because there were some just amazing murder scenes.
Yeah, she looked crazy too. Yeah, I thought she looked creepy. Like there was one scene where you look down at, like when you were earlier when you were talking about the special effects, like she like kind of pulls that thing off her arm and like there's maggots in her arm. Like that was creepy as hell. Like the dark eyes, are creepy. Like I thought that was decent right there, and you're absolutely right. Like 2/3 of the way through, maybe a little less. It was like a decent. Just getting there is what took so long, but even like the dude who she shot in the neck with the bow.
Yeah.
And like he's trying to drive away, and there's just that there's just the arrow sticking out of his neck, and it's like, this is nuts. Like, this is like gnarly. Like, this is cool. Like, that's what you kind of would want from a film like this. And then she immediately like kills him in his car and just flips over. But that was neither here nor there. But I thought that those were pretty good.
Yeah, and I think that there were also some decent kind of plot points in that part of the movie to keep it moving. Like when they figured out that she must be doing it, so they went and kidnapped the boyfriend instead of coming to look for her. Yeah. And then when they realized, like, if this is what's going on, this is how it must have happened. So they go after the guy that had done the ritual to raise her from the dead. It was almost like they were kind of on the defensive, but also one step ahead a little bit, which I thought was a sophistication that you don't normally see in, you know, this type of B slasher movie. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, like I said, the last part of the movie I think was decent and worth watching. It just took a long road to get there. And also, I don't, on the one hand, I think it's like super creative the way that they incorporated, you know, scalping and tomahawks and stuff into a lot of the killing and the bows and arrows and everything. But also maybe, you know, a little stereotypical of
a little. Yeah, just a tad. Yep. You had the option of picking a gun, you grabbed your bow. Yeah. Agreed.
Scalping and eating hearts is just what any angry Native American would have done in this situation, right?
And they really missed the point where she should have thrown it at him, because like he had the pistol drawn or the gun drawn on her, and she took a bite out of it and then like kind of like tossed it aside or dropped it or something like that. And it's like, man, it would have been funny if she just domed him with it.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you get hit with a squishy heart sound, you know, just blood. It's just, I thought it'd be kind of funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my favorite scene in the movie was when the bad guys had all kind of holed up in their compound, and then she shows up just covered in like the war paint and duct tape.
Yeah.
It just looks like an absolute badass. And then that whole sequence after, the way the, you know, lights were flickering and the drawers were opening and closing and stuff. Like they created a very good scene there. But did you have a favorite one?
Yeah, so it was the heart getting cut out scene. But it's because the guy walks in and like he sees his buddy's legs just like, you know, flickering, and you hear like cutting and stuff, and like that's a pretty good horror scene, and so I probably say that for sure. I think that we knew that we as the viewers knew that she was something different, obviously, because we're watching firsthand. But like I felt like that was kind of like the nail in the coffin. They were just like, oh shit, this is not normal. This is really, really bad.
We might have gotten in more trouble than we had counted on.
Really screwed the pooch. Yeah. But anyway, so that was probably the scene. I will say what I kind of like about these B movies though is like, I like the thought, like when you see the bad acting. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be a dick, but when you see like the bad acting, I just like to think that like it was like a smaller town, and like, you know, because we come from a relatively smaller area, and you know, that they wanted like people getting casted, you know, so like locals were kind of talking about it, and like that was the dude who won. So it's like, you know, that like some hometown is behind these actors right now. I just feel like that has to be the case. It's just kind of funny, because then they go to watch it and it's about a girl who is abused and then takes revenge on her killers. You know, I don't know. It just seems great.
Yeah. It's kind of like when that Baptist church paid for Plan 9 from outer space. Like, can you imagine when they all went to the premiere?
Exactly.
And that is a good summary of what is so beautiful about B horror movies.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Well, this one was a struggle to get going, but, you know, I enjoyed the ending part of it. And I feel like this is a pretty good example of like this continuing tradition of figuring out a way to make an attention grabbing, somewhat controversial horror movie and get it noticed. And, for the flaws that were there, I would say that it accomplished that and very much belongs in the history of B horror movies.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Everything you said, I just agree with, man.
It's kind of an emotional week, though.
Oh.
Because next week, our episode is going to be on a movie from the 2020s, and we're in the 2020s, which means there's only 2 movies left to review this season.
Shoot.
And it's going to be back to the drawing board. We got to figure out what we're going to talk about next.
Can't there just be more years out there, Daniel?
Yeah. We're going to put out 2 episodes per year from now, or 2 episodes per decade from now till the end of time.
Yes. That sounds delicious.
That's what we owe our listener.
Yeah. And if you're a gamer listener, turn your brightness up. You'll understand what I'm talking about.
Only if you're in a cave or a night mission. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com. Or hit us up on the IG. That's what the kids call Instagram. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening. But
the other thing with it too, when picking this film out, was like I had it in my head where I was going to try to make you watch a softcore porn just because I thought it'd be funny, just picking out one, and I couldn't find one. I couldn't find.
Turns out this really went out of fashion in the 2010s.
I couldn't find one on Tubi good enough. I was like, I'm not gonna make him pay for it, and so I gave up on that idea. But it's just like, how funny would it be if we start the podcast? You're just like, I think this might have been porn. It's like, no, it was a porn. I made you watch one. Sorry.
That would still not fully pay me back for picking Terra Firma.
Yeah.
That week we did that. So yeah. But at least now we both own a copy because that was the only way to watch it.
That's for damn sure.
Oh man.